Jumping back into the action now, continuing to talk about the NFL playoffs, more on the divisional round coming up this weekend. We got the two Saturday games that we're previewing in today's episode. We just finished talking about the Lions and the Commanders game, and now we're going to backtrack, I guess, a little bit and talk about the first game that we actually have coming up on Saturday between the Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the first game of the divisional round, and the first game of this round is going to feature, two teams that just played each other a couple weeks ago. The Texans are visiting the Chiefs once again after defeating the Chargers in the wild card round the week before. Now they have another date with the Kansas City Chiefs. While the Chiefs, on their side of things, their starters enter a very familiar circumstance, a very familiar situation, right? Being the number one seed again, all of their stars are well rested. There's really no injuries, not to spoil it later, but there's really no injuries to talk about the Chiefs. All their players that maybe were dealing with something are all pretty much gearing to go for this game on Saturday. And they've actually not played since Christmas Day against the Steelers, right? That's the last day. You had guys like, obviously, Patrick play, Kelsey, Chris Jones, all these guys, the main starters, the main contributors, I would say, they haven't played since Christmas Day. That's almost going to be a good month, almost like a month since they've played, right? Just a week short of a month since they last played, which is insane to have that amount of time off already. In the most crucial part of it, you just kind of regenerate health, right? So that's the benefit, right? That's the experience that comes with it, and the Chiefs are no strangers to that, obviously. But like I said before, these two teams already met before that Christmas Day game on the 18th, which was also the Wednesday before, but actually they met on not the 18th, but the 21st. They played on the 21st last time. I forgot they played on the Saturday leading up into that game. I forgot Christmas was on a Wednesday this year. But, they already played a couple days before that Christmas Day game, and the Chiefs came out on top 27-19 on that day. One of the many one-score victories that the Chiefs have had this season. But that game, I think most unfortunately remember it for that Tank Dell injury, which is unfortunate and a huge disappointment for Tank Dell because he was dealing with that fracture, I believe, his rookie year, and now to suffer an injury like that was very, very sad to see for the Texans. And you saw how emotional, CJ Stroud was, and I feel like that definitely changes your perspective, right? In a game like that, to see how everybody was affected by it, I'd have to think that somehow affected them going forward in that game. But now that we're a couple weeks past it, now these two teams meet each other yet again. And more on this matchup, because I feel like this has been a pretty familiar matchup in recent seasons when it comes to the playoffs, right? Based on that, Kansas City is undefeated at home so far this season, while Houston enters this game with a 5-4 record on the road. So definitely a bit more, give or take, knowing what kind of Houston Texans team you're going to get overall. They've been pretty much 500 in that category all season long. And on this matchup more, the Chiefs have won the last 4 matchups against the Houston Texans, and their last playoff game was also a victory for the Kansas City Chiefs. 51-31 was the score the last time these two teams met. And, Houston, funny enough on that, and speaking about like familiarity and similar circumstances, I guess you could say, in the playoffs, Houston is actually in almost the exact same scenario that they were in last year, right? Because last year, they got a blowout win in the wild card round. Last year was against the Browns, and now this year against the Chargers. And then they played the number one seed in the divisional round, and now they have the exact same situation in this year's playoffs. Hopefully trying not to lose, right? But I thought it was pretty kind of a little bit weird and a bit, I guess, unique for that same thing to happen So much so that it's actually the second time since 1970 that a conference has had the same four teams in back-to-back divisional rounds that they had from the previous year, right? It's been like 50 years, over 50 years since we've had the same four teams in back-to-back divisional rounds. The Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Houston Texans are all in the divisional round this time again, but the Texans are not going to be playing the Ravens. Last year, the Ravens were the number one seed, obviously. Now the Chiefs are. So they flipped. The Chiefs are playing the Texans, and the Bills are playing the Ravens. And hopefully, if it's anything like last year, we get some more great matchups in this round, right? The Ravens and Texans game was pretty close, and also the Bills and the Chiefs game was just insane, right? Ending with I believe a Tyler Bass missed field goal, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that was last year. So, we got a good round of games last year. We can only hope to get the same result this time around. So that leads me to the injuries, mostly so for the Houston Texans. They've had some limited participation so far through the week, like Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, Dalton Schultz, and Azeez Al-Shire, but I don't think there's anything really major to kind of report on with them. They are all probably going to play, just holding off a little bit during the week in terms of practice. So they're all limited participants up until this point. So I expect them to be out there regardless. So not much to talk about with injuries. Luckily for both teams, I guess to some respect, are pretty healthy, but the Texans are obviously missing Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell. So that's mostly all of the injury news, and then we get to the keys of the game for each of these two teams, right? For the Houston Texans, the biggest thing I want to see from them is when you're the underdogs in these playoff games, when you're trying to upset, especially a dynasty like the Chiefs are, you're going to need not a lot of things to go your way, like I'm making it sound just lucky, but they're going to need a lot of splash plays in this game, right? Making all the big plays and really winning all the big moments in this game. Taking advantage of the big moments and making sure they come out of it unscathed, but also on the winning side of it, like turnovers, penalties, and, like 50-50 balls or something like that. Winning your matchups, all of those things have to really favor the Texans for them to eventually try and be in a spot to win this game, right? Make those splash plays through your pass rush, through Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, through the great coverage that you showed last week with Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter, right? You have a lot of amazing talent in some of the most pivotal spots. You're going to need those guys to play exceptional and really leave their impact in the game and force a fumble, get an interception, tip a pass that falls into the lap of a linebacker or something like that, hit a big play down the middle to Nico Collins in one-on-one coverage with Trent McDuffie, right? Those sort of individual battles, if your guys win, the Texans are going to be in the best spot they can be to win a game on the road, especially in Arrowhead. So that's what I'm thinking for the Houston Texans. And for the Chiefs, to kind of combat that, I think Patrick and Andy Reid are going to have to just try and get the ball out pretty quick. Don't hold on to it too long. And, use Patrick Mahomes a lot. He's an athletic guy, right? He can move. He could run very well. So make sure to use him. Maybe not to the extent that Josh Allen is used, but make sure that if he has an open lane to take it, gain those yards, and not just have a steady target there for Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter to just kind of tee off, right? That's one thing that we talked about with Justin Herbert. He's not very mobile. He's pretty stationary when he's capable of being, very athletic, like Josh and things like that. So use that to your advantage, obviously, right, with Mahomes, and just move the pocket. Don't just have it be a steady target. A lot of bootlegs, a lot of rollouts and things like that. Keep these guys running, keep these guys moving, and really working for a sack. Don't let them cut any corners where other immobile quarterbacks aren't really able to take advantage of it. So that's really what I want to see from them. And they got the guys to get the ball out quick, right? Just get the ball in the hands of Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, Travis Kelce, all these guys that you have at your disposal. Get in rhythm pretty quick and frustrate, those pass rushers that really can't get to the quarterback in like a second or so. So that's what I'm looking the Chiefs to do in this matchup. And speaking of matchups, pretty simple for this game. I have the same three matchups on here. I have Joe Thuney. They're technically one of their guards. I'm pretty sure he mostly plays guard, but in this case, going out to left tackle because of the injury to their, first left tackle and just really not having a steady player at that spot. They've tried a couple guys, but really that spot's been a worry for them all year long. But Joe Thuney's doing a pretty good job of it, but he's going to have his hands full again with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, whoever ends up playing on that side. So if he's able to just hold his own one-on-one, it definitely makes it easier for this offensive line. And if you don't have to get the ball out quick because they're doing a good job, then that's just an added bonus as well. So that's one of the matchups I'm looking for. Another one, pretty simple, Nico Collins against Trent McDuffie. I thought Trent did a pretty good job with him, guarding him in their first game, and he's going to have to do the same thing again because Nico's really the main guy, obviously, that CJ's trying to get the ball to with all the injuries. And if you're the Chiefs defense, right, I expect them to play a lot of man coverage anyway and, send a lot of guys at CJ Stroud, really forcing CJ to have like John Mechie or Robert Woods or Hutchinson. These guys are going to have to, essentially beat the Chiefs, right? That's going to be the Chiefs' game plan a little bit. And it starts with Trent McDuffie going up against Nico Collins. If Trent's able to hold his own and take Nico out of the equation, then that's a huge swing in their favor, obviously. And that's the second matchup. And the last one I have on here is just defensive lines for both teams going up against their running games, because the Chiefs can throw Pacheco at you, they could throw the rookie running back at you, they could throw Kareem Hunt at you, Xavier Worthy when he's back there as well. They got a lot of guys that they can incorporate in their running game, and that's something that's been very prominent with them this year. And on the other side, the Texans really didn't have a lot of success with Joe Mixon in the first game, right? And I think that's going to have to obviously change, or we're going to see the same result. So how successful the Texans can be versus how, I guess, efficient the Chiefs can continue to be going back to their last game as well. So those are all the matchups. And in terms of predictions, I think this one was a pretty easy one for the number one seeds. I'm going to go with the Chiefs anyway because they're the Chiefs. I'm not going to bet against Patrick or Andy Reid. But also, like the Chargers made a lot of mistakes that hurt themselves last game, and it kind of buried the mistakes that the Texans made as well, and they were just able to overcome it because the Chargers made more mistakes than they did. And in this game against the Chiefs, they're not really going to have too many of those opportunities, right? You might get one, but if you're not able to be on your A-plus game for 60 minutes, usually it ends up finishing in a way like the Chiefs just outlast most of their opponents, and most of their opponents just end up, just kind of falling off, right? Not being able to keep up. So that's really my biggest, deciding factor in all of this. And I mean, if Stephon Diggs was playing and Tank Dell was playing, it would be a whole nother, situation because, I'm sure Stephon Diggs wants to beat the Chiefs more than anyone, and especially with the opportunity to play the Bills in the conference championship, how much of a movie that would be, but obviously that's not possible. So they got a lot of injuries, and you want to talk about, offensive lines being shaky. The Texans had CJ Stroud as one of the most stacked quarterbacks in the NFL this year, and I don't think that's going to hold up against, obviously, Chris Jones and George Karlaftis and these guys. So that's also going to be one that I'm pretty worried about, honestly, with the Texans, especially if they can't get the ball to Nico. It's going to look a bit discombobulated, I would say. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs. They're going to move on. Nothing new, really. So we're going to go with the Chiefs. They're going to move on and beat the Houston Texans. And we'll talk about the other games tomorrow. But for right now, for the rest of this show, we're going to talk about some more news regarding head coaches, this time extending it a little bit to college football and the reported interest of the Chicago Bears in Marcus Freeman. If you're unaware who Marcus Freeman is, he's the Notre Dame head coach currently. He's going to be playing for the national championship on Monday, and his recent success with the Fighting Irish has garnered the attention of the Chicago Bears, who are obviously looking for a head coach. So we're going to talk about that potential reality, right? Marcus Freeman, could he at any point soon or later join the NFL ranks? We're going to discuss that and everything surrounding that when we return after this.